What is up, guys? Welcome back to my weekly series, Top 10 Arrowverse Moments of the Week, this time being week 11. You can tell by the thumbnail that Black Lightning is there, and the reason I'm including Black Lightning on this list, and until further notice, is because, first of all, it's a dctv show on the CW, and even though it's not on the Arrowverse yet, it's very possible, first of all, it's very possible that it already is, and second of all, it's almost inevitable that it's going to join the Arrowverse eventually. So that's the first reason. The second reason I'm including it is because of Black Lightning, Legends of Tomorrow isn't on. So it'll be more difficult for me to find 10 great moments from 3 shows because Black Lightning forced Legends of Tomorrow to not be on. I'm using Black Lightning instead. And I said this in my last video, but a lot of you might not have seen that video. If you want to, click in the top right corner of the video for that. But with all that in mind, let's get into the top 10 Arrowverse moments of the week, week 11. Number 10 is the Team Arrow plus Outsiders fight scene, and also with Felicity and William talking in the background, or maybe they were actually more in the forefront on Arrow. So I like this scene because, first of all, the fight scenes were actually pretty cool, and also Vigilante killing Boots to save Wild Dog and basically fermenting him as a double agent, which I will actually talk about later on this video. That was pretty cool too. And also, it's pretty crazy that this scene actually made Felicity a pretty good character, at least in this scene. The part of the scene where she was talking to William about how badass Green Arrow was actually a pretty cool, like, unique thing to this fight scene. Usually fight scenes are just fight scenes, but this one had a little bit of somebody talking over it, and that was honestly pretty cool. I probably still would have loved the fight scene, maybe even more so without it, but even with it, it was pretty cool, which is why this scene is the number 10 moment on this list. Number 9 is the Ralph and Barry conversation while Barry was in prison on The Flash. I've said this before, like, multiple times, but I love Hartley Sawyer in his serious scenes, just like this one. Now, this one wasn't as good as his previous ones, which is why it's nowhere near the top. It's at number 9. The other two being when he was arguing with Barry about whether or not he should have been ratted out, and the one where he was telling Joe what will happen if he frames Marlise DeVoe. Those two were both number 1 on their respective weeks. This one, however, is number 9, so it's not as good as those ones, but it's still pretty damn good. Just it's honestly really inspiring, like, not in a practical sense, but just in like a viewing sense. Barry tells Ralph that he needs to overcome his fear, and then he does that later in the episode. That was honestly really cool, and it's why this moment or this scene is on the list. Again, it's not as good as it could have been, because usually those serious scenes with Hartley Sawyer are really good, but it was still pretty good. Speaking of Ralph overcoming his fear in order to save Vibe and Killer Frost, that's number 8 on the list. Elongated Man saves Vibe and Killer Frost. Well, technically he wasn't Elongated Man yet, but this was the first time we saw his costume in action, and the costume looked better in action than it actually did in the promotional photos. I'm not lying. Maybe it was because of the lighting. Maybe the lighting made it look better because there was this red lighting in the scene it made the suit look pretty cool, but the suit definitely looked also really great when he was stretching. And seeing his stretching powers in a purple suit, that was really, really cool. But this scene as a whole was really great because it's the first time we see the Elongated Man in action in this new suit, and also because, like I said earlier, it was inspiring how he overcame the fear that Barry and him were talking about in the previous conversation. Number 7 is the Black Lightning fight scene on Black Lightning. In episode 1, I said that the fight scene was pretty good, except for the parts where he wasn't using his electricity in the fight style. But when he was incorporating his electric powers into his fighting style, it was pretty great. And that fight scene as a whole, I would say, was a pretty good fight scene. But the one in episode 2 of Black Lightning was so much better, mainly because not only did he incorporate the electricity into his fight style, I don't think he threw a single punch that didn't have a little spark of electricity come off of it. And that's the main reason I like the Black Lightning fight scenes, because the way he incorporates his electricity into them, and also here in episode 2 when he was punching somebody and a spark flies off of it, it makes him more unique as a superhero, because that doesn't really happen for any other superhero that I could think of that has a live action TV show. So the fact that he has electricity to incorporate into his fight style, and also whenever he's punching somebody, you can have a little spark come off of it to make it more interesting. That's pretty cool, and they did it so much better in this scene, in this episode, than they did it in the previous episode. Honestly, I think almost everything they did in episode 2 was better than how they did it in episode 1. Number 6 is Lawanda's death scene on Black Lightning. This was something that made me realize that people were right about the realism of this show. In episode 1, when it came out, a lot of people were praising it for how grounded it was. I didn't really see that much. Like, it still felt like a superhero show without a lot of grounded moments. But this episode, especially this scene, really showed me how grounded and realistic this show is. Because when Lawanda was standing there with Lala raising or holding out his gun to her, I totally expected either somebody like Black Lightning to save her, or Lala to hesitate, like every other villain always does in every show, and do a monologue or something like that. And turns out he didn't. He just shot her, and that was such a realistic death scene. And just the fact that he didn't monologue, nobody saved her. It was really unexpected and unpredictable, and just in general, really, really realistic. And it made me realize that people are right. This show is really grounded, and maybe that's cool. Maybe like the other shows aren't as grounded. Green Arrow is obviously kind of grounded, but it had magic in season 4 and other stuff like that. And Black Lightning, even though he has powers, the show is very grounded, and this scene is what made me see that. Number 5 is the waitress is somehow connected to the Speed Force symbols on the Flash. When I say the waitress, I mean the waitress we saw in the Supergirl part of the crossover, who's somehow connected to Iris and Barry. I'm calling her the waitress because we don't know who she is. She is probably Dawn Allen, but we don't have proof of that. But this moment showed us that she is somehow connected to not only Barry Allen and Iris, we already knew that because we were told that, but to the Speed Force symbols. The ones that Barry was writing when he was out of it, when he didn't know what he was doing, when he was going crazy. He was writing those symbols. I like this scene so much because it's really mysterious what's going on here. This is the two big mysteries of this season. What were those Speed Force symbols, and how do they connect to everything that's going on this season? Because we've seen them multiple times. I'm pretty sure we saw them on DeVoe himself and somewhere else, and now we see them here with the waitress, who's somehow connected to Iris and Barry, who's probably their daughter from the future, is writing them down. So it's very intriguing and mysterious what's going on here, which is why I like this scene. It really builds on the mystery of season 4, and hopefully it has a huge payoff, because if it doesn't, I'll be very disappointed. Number 4 is the big reveal that Vigilante is a double agent on Arrow. I love this reveal because, first of all, it makes sense, because why would Vigilante work together with bad guys? It doesn't make any sense that would happen. So, because it's literally in his name, he's Vigilante. He's a Vigilante. So the reveal that he's a double agent makes everything makes so much more sense. And second of all, it would be really cool if Vigilante went back to being either an anti-hero, or even a hero joining up with the Outsiders. That would be awesome if he actually became a member of the new Team Arrow, aka the Outsiders, aka the Terrifics. And that would be really awesome. Hopefully this isn't a big ruse by Caden James. Hopefully this isn't a big plan, a genius plan he has to lure in the new Team Arrow and kill them or something. Hopefully Vigilante is actually telling the truth, because like I said, it would make sense and it would be awesome. But if it's not true and it's all a part of Caden James' brilliant plan, I will be very, very, very disappointed, because I really want Vigilante to join the Outsiders. Number 3 is Jefferson Pierce realizes the city needs Black Lightning on Black Lightning. This happened right after Lawanda's death scene, and he was told that Lawanda died. The reason I like this scene is because it makes him go back to being Black Lightning, to realizing that he needs to be Black Lightning much more naturally than episode 1 did. And also, on top of that, Jefferson Pierce, or what's his name, Cress Williams, was really great in the scene as an actor. He was great in this scene. But just Jefferson realizing that the principal couldn't, because Lawanda was his student, and being the principal didn't save her, and Black Lightning could have. It was a great scene. It was really well acted by Cress Williams, and it made him want to go back to being Black Lightning much more naturally and organically, more so than episode 1 did, which just had his daughters kidnapped, which was fine, but It would have been better if this was episode 1, and this is why he returned to being Black Lightning in the first place. Number 2 is I know what turbulence is on Supergirl. This moment was hilarious. So what happened was Brainiac 5 was describing, because like the Legion ship was having a little bit of turbulence, and Brainiac 5 was describing why that happened, and then he just said it's just turbulence. Wynn then repeated turbulence for I don't know why, but that doesn't really distract me because then Brainiac 5 started explaining him what turbulence is, and then Wynn said, I know what turbulence is. It was hilarious. I laughed out loud. I've repeated watching that scene multiple times, and I've laughed every single time. It's a hilarious scene, and just all in this episode, all the interactions between Brainiac 5 and Wynn were all funny, but this moment right here really takes the cake as one of the funniest moments on Supergirl ever, and definitely the funniest moment in this episode, and definitely the best moment in this episode on Supergirl. So this is the only moment on Supergirl that's on this list, just because I couldn't really find any other moments other than this one. But this one is so funny that I needed to put it high, really, really high on the list. Before I get to number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Ralph saves the hostages from that guy in the beginning. That was a fairly entertaining scene. Second one is Black Canary stops that train with her sonic scream. That was really cool. The third one is Rain's greatest fear when Sai used her powers on her and she saw Ruby being taken away. That connects to how I said that Sam is fighting back for control, or at least is trying to, in Rain. So that's the reason I liked that moment. I didn't include any of those moments because they weren't as good as the 10 on this list. But with that in mind, let's get to number 1. Number 1 is Ralph becomes the Elongated Man on The Flash. You can technically say that the whole episode was him becoming the Elongated Man, and yeah, it was. But I felt like the moment that this whole episode was leading to was the moment where he got the Elongated Man name, and the way he got it was such a natural, organic, and also hilarious way. He was talking to a reporter, and the reporter was asking him what they should call him and what his powers are, and he's like, I stretch, I elastate, I elongate, man, and that turned to him getting the name the Elongated Man in the newspaper. That was fair. Also, that was, for one, really, really funny, and two, it was so natural because Team Flash coming up with the name the Elongated Man didn't seem like it was actually possible because it's such a mouthful of a name that it's not something Cisco would come up with. So the fact that the newspaper came up with it, and the fact that it was a play on words with the I elongate man, and also it was a really funny moment. For all those reasons, I put that moment at number 1 on this list. It's a moment that the whole episode was accumulating to, and it was building up to the moment where he got the name the Elongated Man. But anyway, let me know what your favorite moment was in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.